Today, for the third time in 2 years, is infamous mafia don Papa Joe Iacovetta. Iacovetta takes the stand to defend himself against allegations of his involvement in the ordered killings of no less than 17 men. The state's case against him relies heavily on circumstantial evidence, and a third acquittal has already been predicted.
Never shall innocent blood be shed, yet the blood of the wicked shall flow like a river. The three shall spread their blackened wings and be the vengeful striking hammer of God.
To you for a moment, Mr. Zuckerberg. Instagram recently announced that it's going to restrict all teenagers from access to eating disorder material, suicidal ideation themed material, self-harm content, and that's fantastic. That's great. What's odd, what I'm trying to understand is why it is that Instagram is only restricting, it's restricting access to sexually explicit content, but only for teens ages 13 to 15. Why not restrict it for 16 and 17-year-olds as well?
Senator, my understanding is that we don't allow sexually explicit content on the service for people of any age. How
is that going?
Our prevalence metrics suggest that I think it's 99% or so of the content that we remove we're able to identify automatically using AI systems. So I think that our efforts in this, while they're not perfect, I think are industry leading. The other thing that you asked about was self-harm content, which is what we recently restricted. And we made that shift. I think the state of the science is shifting a bit. Previously, we believed that when people were thinking about self-harm, it was important for them to be able to express that and get support. And now more of the thinking in the field is that it's just better to not show that content at all, which is why we recently moved to restrict that from showing up for those teens at all.
Usually he's ready with an answer. He's got the facts. He's got the statistics. In this case, he says a couple of things that are low confidence words. He starts by saying, my understanding is that we don't allow any sexually explicit content for anyone of any age. Why is the CEO saying my understanding? Like, isn't that something you should know, the policy of the tolerance of the company? So it's weird that he would say my understanding. And then he went on to say, I think it's 99% or so of the content we removed, blah, blah. So I'm not entirely certain why that's happening. I wonder if it's because he's a little less hands-on with the Instagram side of things. But these are things that I would expect him to know with a little bit more certainty. Finally, at the end, he said something that I thought was a little odd, but not as a behavioral analyst. As someone who has a degree in sociology and who used to work in therapy, specializing in emotional management, he said that they used to believe that, it's good to talk about self-harm, but now it seems like there's some stuff coming out where it's not a good idea, so yeah, we've decided to go ahead and block that. The reason this was interesting for me is because in 2001, that's over 20 years ago, there was a publication that was put together by several government agencies and health organizations. And this included the CDC, 2 different organizations that dealt with suicide, and several that dealt with mental health. And it was a list of guidelines specifically for media and their recommendations of how to report or talk about self-harm and suicide. And a lot of what they talked about was about the prevalence, like how obvious it is on the publication, and how much details are given about certain aspects of the story. And these were based on a lot of research on the subject and something that's called suicide contagion. And this is something that's very well documented. I'll leave a bunch of links in the descriptions if you guys want to look more into this. But there had already been a ton of studies that showed that when you report about suicide on a major publication, the rate of suicide in that area amongst people of a similar demographic will increase. The reason for this is quite simple. There is a ton of research on a psychological principle known as social proof, which is similar to peer pressure or groupthink. They all mean more or less the same thing. That because we are social beings, we take our behavioral cues from other people. And this is why a lot of marketing campaigns will tell you that this is a bestseller. Or McDonald's will tell you that billions and billions have been served in hopes that you will go buy one burger. To add to that, we know that teenagers are more susceptible to social proof, peer pressure, and groupthink. And we've known for decades that suicide contagion is a thing. I mean, 20 years ago, all these American organizations were writing about it to the point where a university student in Canada was studying it. So I find it hard to believe that the guy who owns the most successful social media platform wasn't aware of these publications, these guidelines, and this history.
Now you will receive us. We do not ask for your poor or your hungry. We do not want your tired and sick.
It is your corrupt we claim.
It is your evil that will be sought by us.
With every breath, we shall hunt them down.
Each day, we will spill their blood till it rains down from the skies.
Do not kill, do not rape, do not steal. These are principles which every man of every faith can embrace.
These are not polite suggestions. These are codes of behavior. And those of you that ignore them will pay the dearest cost.
There are varying degrees of evil. We urge you lesser forms of filth, not to push the bounds and cross over into true corruption, into our domain.
But if you do, one day you will look behind you and you will see we three. And on that day, you will reap it.
And we will send you to whatever God you wish.
And shepherds we shall be, for thee, my Lord, for thee. Power hath descended forth from thy hand. Therefore may swiftly carry out thy command. So we shall flow ever forth to thee, and teeming with souls shall it ever be.
In nomine Patri.
Et Filii, Spiritus Sancti. How far are we going to take this star?
The question is not how far. The question is, do you possess the Constitution, the depth of faith to go as far as is needed?